Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Courtside View basketball webcast. This is Tribune sports editor Joe Walljasper along with Tribune basketball beat writer Steve Walentic. Steve, we've had a few weeks off for the holidays. Pretty eventful time for Missouri basketball. They beat Illinois in an exciting game in the bragging rights series in St. Louis. Play an even more exciting game at UCLA. They lose close in overtime. And then they come back in their final non-conference game and edge Bucknell 66-64 at home. So I think the maybe most interesting development in that period of time is in those three games, Phil Pressey attempted 64 shots. 63 shots. What are your thoughts about kind of this direction that the offense took during this three-game period, and your thoughts on your point guard maybe shooting the ball that much?
Well, I'll preface this by saying that Phil Pressey is a capable scorer, and we've seen that. And he had 26 points against Bucknell and shot 10 for 22, which certainly isn't bad. And against Bucknell, there's a reasonable argument to be made that Missouri needed that because you look, Ernest Ross and Jabari Brown went 2 for 18 from the field, and they're probably your two best spot-up shooters right now.
I would say Lawrence Bowers.
Well, okay, wing players at the moment, and then other than that, Lawrence Bowers was, I think, the only other guy in double figures. Keon Bell only attempted one shot in the game, and the way that Bucknell's game plan was set up was to have Phil shoot the ball rather than be a playmaker. I think that worked against Bucknell, and they were able to pull a win out, and a good win, a win that's going to help them later on. But long term, I don't think it's the best thing for Missouri to have Phil Pressey being in a go-to kind of role. I think what makes him an elite player is his playmaking ability, and that's what we saw from him last year. And I think you lose some of that when he's the guy taking 22 shots.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think they said after the Bucknell game, that really he's not getting defended that much different than in the past. So I don't know. I guess my take on it would be that I would like to see them just keep trying to keep screening, keep trying to get him into the lane, and then if all else fails late in the shot clock, I mean, if they're guarding him that way, those shots are going to be there early, middle, and late, I think. I think long term you get into some situations where if you got the guy who is dribbling it also shooting it all the time, unless you're really winning consistently and winning big, I think you're running into problems where you got people starting to get a little disgruntled with their roles. I think you could even see it some Saturday, people starting to stand around quite a bit on offense. They really did not get hardly any offensive rebounds, even though you would think against Bucknell they could do that. So I think some things kind of creep in there when you got the guy who is your point guard also doing a lot of the shooting. And the other thing is every game is different. I think in an Illinois game, he shot atrociously, but most of them there weren't a ton of bad shots. He was just missing them. And some of them were in the lane, which allowed for offensive rebounds. Now that UCLA game, it was just a high possession game. So I don't know. I didn't watch that game and think he's got to stop shooting. I mean, he had 19 assists. I mean, that was just a high possession game up and down the floor. So I didn't see anything wrong with that. I thought he shot a little too much against Bucknell, even though he was making them. And you're right. I think that for that game it was fine. They won it, and he hit big shots down the stretch. But I just think long term that's probably not what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at it, even with his 10 for 22 performance, over the last three games he's only shot 33% from the field. He's a 36% shooter for the season. That's below average. I mean, he's, as I said, he's a capable scorer, but he right now is a below average shooter. And the shots that he can create for other people that we've seen throughout his career tend to be better looks than the shots that he's creating for himself, which are a lot of three-pointers, a lot of long twos, pulling up at the free throw line. Again, he can make those, but what makes him dynamic is his ability to get open looks for other people, and those open looks tend to be better shots than what he can get for himself.
I guess maybe the last thing to discuss on this topic would be if teams aren't defending him any differently, is it just the makeup of Missouri's offense that maybe is making it a little more difficult for him this year to be the guy who is consistently able to get into the lane? Because they don't have outside shooters that you really have to respect the way they did last year. So maybe that is part of the reason why this lane is kind of clogged up for him a little.
I mean, I think that's definitely true. Your point is well taken that their best three-point shooter is really Lawrence Bowers, and he's not spending a whole bunch of time spotting up outside the arc because he's also doing things inside. I don't think he has the pick-and-roll threat that he had last year with Ricardo Ratliff. So guys don't play off of him as well. I think there are still capable players around him.
Bowers plays off him pretty well.
Bowers does. Yeah. Bowers does, but he's kind of the one guy who you feel like is always in sync with Pressey, and other guys I think have still been trying to work on that. And a guy like Alex Oriaki, I just don't think is built to be the scorer that Ratliff was. Who was a really efficient low post threat.
Yeah, with Alex, I think he's just trying to get offensive rebounds and score that way, because even when you do pass it to him, he struggles to catch it. So I think his role is to offensive rebound. And
I mean, the pick and roll was such an integral part. I mean, Missouri still runs a lot of pick and roll, but the success that they had with it last year with Ratliff and Pressey running it, particularly, and you think about some of their bigger wins, again, the win at Baylor last January, was so much of that was Pressey drawing defenders to him, and then finding a capable guy, making teams pay for overplaying him. And I think this team just isn't quite as good in a lot of different little areas to be as potent offensively.
All right, well, tune in tomorrow. We will discuss the SEC and Missouri's chances of winning the whole thing.